As I walked into the busy cafe looking for my client, my gaze was drawn to my ex-wife, Jennifer. She was nestled next to a chubby, middle-aged man who had plainly let himself go. Jennifer sat by him for years, appearing entirely at ease. Everything about this man exuded richness. Standing in the doorway, memories of our time together flooded back, though it had been 3 years since our divorce. The emotions seemed as raw and agonizing as if they had occurred yesterday. Instead of being with her, I found myself witnessing from a distance, an outsider in her new life, where her aspirations were realized. While my troubles had only just begun, this ordeal began with a work travel to Denver for a client meeting to avoid the arduous drive back. I had planned to stay overnight. However, after 1 hour into the journey, the client contacted to cancel owing to a car accident. Despite being unhurt, he apologized profusely for the inconvenience. I assured him that it was not an issue and recommended we reschedule. Despite my cool demeanor, the unexpected reversal made me dread the lengthy drive back. Determined to make the most of the situation, I decided to surprise my wife with a romantic meal. Minutes later, I turned onto my street, expecting a pleasant evening. Instead, I found 3 foreign cars parked in my driveway. Knowing Jennifer frequently had guests over while I was away, I shrugged and parked on the street. I strolled into the house expecting things to be usual. However, the sight of garments strewn over the living room floor instantly aroused red flags. Standing there, a horrible feeling came over me as I realized the sounds I was hearing were far from innocent. My wife's moans were clearly those of pleasure, not sorrow. My heart plummeted as the awful reality struck me. Jennifer was cheating on me. Despite my hesitancy, I felt I needed to confront whatever was going on upstairs. As I approached the top of the stairs, I could hear her wild cries echoing through the bedroom doorframe. I was confronted with a scene that made my stomach turn. There were 3 guys with her, 2 strangers, and Alex Turner, her boss. They had my wife perform activities that made my blood boil. My loathing for Alex rose as he praised her and exploited her for his own pleasure. They regarded her as a mere object, using foul language to establish their power over her. Watching this made me angry and disgusted. Unable to reconcile this lady with the Jennifer I had known for 10 years, I silently retreated downstairs and took refuge in my office. I grabbed my digital video camera, which thankfully still had some battery life and an old holiday tape on it. My intention was to document this betrayal, recording the agonizing minutes before my emotions overcame me. While such a scene may be appealing to some, I found it to be a waking nightmare. It filled me with great pain and betrayal, leaving me completely crushed. I went downstairs to my office to clear my head. I opened the safe and took out my revolver, turning the safety off just in case. Although I was not generally violent, the desire to regain control was overwhelming. I returned to the living room and gathered the car keys and wallets from the discarded pants on the floor. I then walked outside and deflated the tires of all of the automobiles, including Jennifer S. A wicked smile grew across my face as I conceived a scheme that I was confident would succeed. I had observed Jennifer's mobile phone on the bedside table while recording, so I positioned myself discreetly behind the stairs and dialed her number. After a few rings, she finally answered. The hush in the home showed that she had instructed the others to be quiet. She answered breathlessly, "Hey, John, how's Denver?" I could hear the men's faint chuckling in the background. "You sound out of breath. Is everything okay?" I pretended to be concerned. "Yeah, I just had to hurry upstairs to get my phone." She soon collected herself. "My customer canceled, so I'll be home shortly." "How about dinner?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a calm demeanor despite my inner rage. "Are you on your way home now?" she inquired, plainly apprehensive. "Yes, I just need to freshen up." "See you soon," I said easily. She quickly hung up and I smirked, knowing what was about to happen. As expected, 4 naked people began running down the stairs into the living room. The men rapidly dressed, and Jennifer threw on some clothes as they all dashed out. She put on her shoes and jacket, looking outside, hoping they'd be gone before I arrived. If she wasn't so agitated, she might have noticed my automobile parked down the street. I crept inside the house via a side door. The men began shouting at Jennifer all at once, prompting her to move onto the porch to try to hear them more clearly. At that very moment, anarchy broke out. I slammed the front door shut and locked it, preventing Jennifer from pleading her case. She caught a glimpse of my enraged expression through the window, but words were meaningless now. The men ran back to the porch, beating on the door and demanding their goods. Sensing their intentions, I immediately dialed 911 to report an attempted break-in. The operator informed me that a neighbor had already called with my name and address. The police arrived quickly, within minutes. As the officers questioned Jennifer, I came forward, insisting that the men had assaulted my wife and demanded their arrest. The males instantly protested, claiming they had been invited and that everything was voluntary. Everyone looked at Jennifer, expecting for her to affirm or deny avoiding eye contact. She ashamedly revealed that she had invited the men and eagerly participated. The males appeared to relax, happy that they would not face any charges. More police cars arrived and took everyone's information. The senior officer then informed me that, because Jennifer had invited these men and they were all consenting adults, there was little they could legally do. He proposed counseling, his eyes filled with contempt as he glanced at Jennifer. I told the cops to arrange a taxi for Jennifer, saying she wasn't allowed back in the house that night. When one of the men discovered that his tires were flat, he called for a cab. They also attempted to accuse me of stealing their goods, but I flatly denied the allegations. I returned to the porch where Jennifer stood, expecting the cab. My eyes blazed with rage as I glanced at her. Despite my rage, Jennifer went towards me, unaware of the revolver I had hidden. She might have fled if she had known. "David, I'm very sorry," she said, but I stopped her off abruptly. "You have crushed my heart, and I will never forgive you. Alex labeled you unfairly, which suits. From now on, I will refer to you as such and never use your true name. If you need to communicate with me, do so, Tom." I went back inside, locked the door, and left her outside. She raced back to the group in tears, and Alex tried to soothe her, but she pushed him away, giving me a brief sense of relief. However, that feeling immediately passed. When I returned to my bedroom, the lingering smell of lemon intensified my wrath. I stormed through the room, throwing the mattress onto the yard. I grabbed my toolbox from the garage and disassembled the bed frame, throwing the components outside as well. Back in the bedroom, the devastation reflected my shattered life. I grabbed Jennifer's phone and began reading through her contacts and texts. As expected, I discovered disturbing emails, images, and videos of her with various males. She obviously had intimate relationships with them. I let out a bitter laugh as I realized how blind I had been. My ignorance had finally ended. I took all of her possessions from the bedroom and put them on the front lawn. While emptying the last drawer in the guest room, I discovered even more of her belongings. I felt something stuck inside. Furious, I pulled it open, revealing many DVDs hiding underneath. One of the cases cracked, but the disc remained intact. My heart sunk again as I inspected the DVDs. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Downstairs, I organized everything on a shelf and started watching. The first DVD showed Jennifer and her friend Lisa in Lisa's residence, engaged in sexual behaviors with numerous persons. I watched for several hours. Tears trickled down my cheeks, stopping only at the last 2 discs. The first of the last 2 showed Jennifer with her personal trainer, which I had paid for. She was always too fatigued to engage in intimacy following her sessions, which now made sense. The second DVD was the most devastating. Jennifer is in her office with Brad and his boss, Tom Mitchell, who is highly known in the town. Seeing this, I felt a deeper sense of betrayal. I carefully placed her phone, DVDs, and the tape I had previously captured in a huge envelope. I intended to give it all to my lawyer and best buddy, Chris Hayes, one of the few people I trusted. Nothing else mattered at that point. I turned on Jennifer's computer and copied all files, emails, photos, and videos to external disks. It took an hour, but I was determined. Following that, I sat down to go through her digital archives. I discovered videos comparable to those featured on DVDs, as well as obscene photographs. Digging deeper, I discovered emails from the previous 6 months stored behind misleading file names, exposing even more of her deceit. I discovered a sequence of emails between Jennifer, Brad, and several other males, including several with Lisa. I rejected them last week, but one email nearly broke me. For a brief moment, I considered using my gun, but then determined she wasn't worth it. I needed to be strong. Jennifer's email to Lisa saddened me. Lisa had asked why she hadn't left me and described her ideal future husband. Jennifer's remark was brutally honest and cut hard. Lisa: I'm done with John. He is faithful yet foolish. I'm scared he's about to uncover my double existence. He isn't completely clueless, but love blinds him. He started gaining weight recently, and his expanding belly is a turnoff compared to the other males he lacks. I despise his beard and mustache. They make him appear nasty. I used to care about him, but the previous few years have been too exciting to let go of. If his attorney friend becomes involved, he might cause problems. Brad and Tom at work use hints to offer promotions and bonuses. I find it entertaining. I also want a home and a car. If I play my cards well, I may be able to secure monthly alimony. I'm looking forward to our Tuesday party, once my tennis injury has healed. Mike is wonderful. Make sure I have last Thursday's video. It was my first experience with so many males. My ideal man must be wealthy, loyal, submissive, and not overly brilliant. He must satisfy my every wish without question. I'm not concerned about the bedroom as long as there is money, I laugh. I can get my desires met elsewhere. Sometimes it's just too easy. Damn, John is now home. I've got to go. See you on Tuesday. Call me. I read this message several times, each word more nasty than the last. It was heartbreaking to realize she felt this way about me and had been cheating for more than 2 years. Had I been so blind, I would have collapsed on the couch, exhausted and in emotional misery, eventually falling asleep. After a sleepless night, I called in ill to work the following morning. I contacted my close buddy and attorney, Chris Hayes. His secretary, Linda, responded. I had known her for nearly as long as I had known Chris. I immediately demanded a meeting, but she informed me that he would be in court all day. Linda repeated my message, and Chris instructed her to schedule me in an hour. If he starts pestering you with nonsense, mention Laura White, and I'll grab his attention. See you in an hour, I remarked before hanging up. As I was getting dressed, my phone rang. I was hesitant to speak with Jennifer. I checked the caller ID and saw it was an unknown number, so I responded, figuring it was Chris. Hello, Mr. Lewis. This is Tom Mitchell from Jennifer's office. I'd like to address the happenings of last night at your residence. Can we meet today at my office to elucidate the problem? I'm not sure if he knew about the video footage of him and my wife. I recognized he was concerned about retaining Brad Bennett's major clientele. Jennifer and Brad were vital assets to him, and he did not want to lose either. Furthermore, he was probably concerned about poor press for both his company and himself. Mr. Mitchell, I began in the meeting room. Chris emphasized that Jennifer's bosses had twisted her behavior, preparing them for serious legal consequences. Chris predicted that once Tom Mitchell sees the strength of our evidence, he will most likely seek a settlement. If it's less than $2 million, he can forget it, I said. Let us aim for $2.5 million. I have seen your legal bills previously, I joked, attempting to lighten the situation. Come over tonight at 7 p.m. Anna is cooking something special. Do you need a break? I scheduled a meeting with Tom Mitchell at 2 p.m. Linda had just entered the office. "Chris, Jennifer is on line 1, she said. "Linda, I said no calls," Chris snapped. "Sorry, Chris, but Jennifer insists on speaking with you." Linda said, "I thought you might want to take it." Chris sighed. "All right, put her through. Does she know David is here?" Linda said, "Not that I know of." "Tell her I'll talk to her in a moment," he said, calming himself. As Linda departed, I observed, I bet she realized her phone, computer, and DVDs were missing and discovered her belongings on the lawn. "Wow, what a night you had. Let me handle this call. Please do not interrupt." Chris said, "I need to sort out a few things." He connected the call. I could hear Chris's side of the conversation and imagined Jennifer's hurried reactions. "Hello, Jennifer. Yes, I spoke to him. David is a decent man and a friend. I expected you, of all people, to defend him rather than betray him. No excuses. Yes, I represent him, and he has a solid case. This one should be easy. You've shattered a man who cared profoundly for you. He does not care about your excuses. Get yourself a decent attorney. You'll need one." "Yes, Tom Mitchell has organized a meeting for 2 p.m. But I don't believe you should go. If you even attempt to eavesdrop, I will tell David to leave and the situation will worsen. It is best to keep distant and calm today. I know he left your goods on the lawn, but just as you can let people into your bedroom, he can take your belongings from the house. I am surprised he did not resort to violence last night. Yes, he was armed, but he believed you were in danger and was acting in self-defense. It is in the police report. If it were my Anna, I'd be in jail right now. I believe David was angry because of your lost stuff. Talk with David. He probably left them on the lawn. I've handled all of the escrow paperwork. You both have equal rights. You decide how to use these privileges," Chris continued, instructing her to stay still and let David stay in the house until things calmed down. He warned her not to push it and said he wanted to beat her. He encouraged her to stay with Lisa and vowed to keep in touch. He also advised her to have her lawyer call him once they had chosen one. Chris's demeanor was determined. He made it obvious that her emotions would not influence him and that he could be harsh when required. This was one of those moments when he expressed remorse that she would now see a side of him that only his rivals knew about and urged her not to like it. Chris concluded by telling Jennifer to keep her distance from David and stay in her office because he didn't want anything to do with her. Chris turned to me and asked if I had caught most of the chat. Yes, I did, I admit. I want to approach her face to face and express my feelings, but I don't believe I can handle seeing her again. Not yet. I have a number of requests for you, David, Chris explained, changing to a more upbeat tone. First, give me the tapes. I handed him the videotapes from the packet. Chris directed Linda to go to lunch with the ones from last night, Mike's film at the tennis club, and her recordings with Brad and Mitchell. He explained after noticing my bewildered expression. I'll go over these tapes to save you from further distress. Before we meet with Mitchell, you need to be cool while waiting for them to help you. Recognizing his wisdom, I thanked him and told Linda the good news. She joked about going to a high-end restaurant if Chris paid. We laughed and exited the office. Linda was a fantastic lunch companion, helping me forget about my problems for a bit. When we returned, we found Chris in high spirits, performing a victory dance. David, these recordings are a game changer. I believe it, he said. My bittersweet expression must have alerted him. Oh, David. I'm sorry. I didn't know how much these videos had affected you. I was just excited by the evidence. He apologized. David, come over here. I need you to see something. Chris beckoned. I stood behind him and stared at the television. Have you seen the complete video? Mike took a shot at the tennis club with Jennifer. He asked. No, I only skimmed some of it. It was difficult to watch without wanting to lash out, I admit. Brace yourselves for this, Chris said, his tone stern. After Mike and Jennifer finished, a small throng gathered in the men's locker area. Yes, this is the tennis club's changing room. It's difficult to believe, but she let the other men who were watching join in following Mike. I'm not showing you this to upset you, but to show you the type of person we're dealing with, Chris stated, pointing to the screen on his desk. The man on film was elderly, wrapped in a towel, with long gray hair and a walrus mustache. Do you recognize him? Chris asked, pressing play. The man dropped the towel, showing a physique that any man would be proud of. The true problem was that he walked straight to my wife and began having sex with her, as 5 other guys surrounding her, excitedly waiting their turn. I don't know who this guy is, but you appear to, I said, attempting to remain calm. David, this is critical for our meeting today at the tennis club at 4 p.m. Chris stated, his eagerness palpable as he detailed his strategy. I could not help but smile at his plan. Aside from being a friend, Chris was an excellent lawyer, and I felt confident having him on my side. We left his office and headed downtown, carrying a portable DVD player, printed photos, and legal documents. When we got at the building, we went to Tom Mitchell's office on the top floor, and Jennifer's office was just a floor below. After waiting in the reception area, we were led into Mr. Mitchell's luxurious office. I sensed someone in the corridor looking at me just as I was about to enter. I looked over and noticed a woman who hurriedly disappeared around the corner. Guess who I thought was relieved? I would not have to confront her today. Tom's office was adorned with beautiful furniture, decorations, awards, and photographs of prominent persons. I was wondering if he'd ever brought Jennifer here. My dislike for Mr. Mitchell grew stronger. Hello, Mr. Mitchell. This is my friend Chris Hayes, who will be joining us today, I remarked as we clasped hands. Mr. Lewis, Dave. I thought we were meant to have a private meeting, Tom replied, astonished. So, I brought Chris along. Whatever you need to say to me, you can also say to him. I made a clear statement that left no space for argument. He unwillingly acknowledged Chris's presence and continued addressing me while ignoring him, which made Chris smile. I knew what was coming, but I let Tom speak first. Dave, may I call you Dave? Tom asked. Sure. Not an issue. Actually, I believe Brad Bennett should also be present. This worries him as well, I offered after a pause. Tom used the intercom. Julie, please notify Brad to come to my office immediately. Drop everything and go here right now. Understood. Brad will be here shortly, she said. In the meanwhile, I'm deeply sorry for the disruption Brad and Jennifer have created in your life. I know last night must have been dreadful, but if we work together, we might be able to find a solution that works for everyone. Tom spoke hopefully. Mr. Mitchell, what exactly do you mean? I asked, waiting for Brad to arrive. I actually care about your wife, Jennifer, Tom began, but was interrupted by Brad's arrival. Brad hesitated, as if he may go, but Tom ordered him to sit down. Brad reluctantly obeyed and avoided my sight. Dave, I want you to know that I love Jennifer like a daughter, he began. But Chris cut in. Are you implying that you have a penchant for incest, Mr. Mitchell? Chris asked, taking him off guard. I chuckled, understanding Chris's point. What do you accuse me of? Incest? What is this about? He replied, clearly offended. Chris said, let me show you a picture is worth 1,000 words, and placed the DVD player on Tom's desk. These are screenshots from the video you're about to watch, he explained, handing them to Brad, who reluctantly handed them over to Tom. The images clearly showed Tom and Brad with my wife, removing any doubt about their actions. Tom probably recognized his own boardroom table where the events occurred. Are you telling me that you recorded and shared this? Tom asked, almost speechless. Brad was too stunned to respond. Here's how it will go, Mr. Mitchell. Chris began to enjoy the moment. First and foremost, Jennifer keeps her job. David thinks she'll need it, and she fits in well here, Chris said with a wink to Tom. Second, Mr. Bennett has left. Jennifer stays. He goes, Chris said, pointing at the astonished Brad. Third, you will make us a financial offer that values our intelligence. We will review your proposal and respond within 5 business days. We may take legal action within 2 months if necessary." Before they could respond, Chris started the film, which showed Tom and Brad repeatedly indulging in sexual actions with my wife in their boardroom. Tom was taken aback, as Brad averted his gaze, understanding what was going on. I could see Tom considering how to safeguard his business, family, and finances. Brad: "After these gentlemen depart, we need to talk about your future here," Tom remarked, his voice shaking. "I'll talk with my legal counsel to work out a settlement that will please you to some extent," Tom mused aloud. "You both recognize the potential consequences for our business if this information were leaked prematurely." "Don't worry, Mr. Mitchell," Chris comforted him. "We will keep this confidential until we hear a genuine proposal from you. However, I wouldn't discount Mr. Bennett just yet. He might have more copies of the video, which could offer him an advantage. If we do not approach this cautiously, you and Mr. Bennett can handle the situation independently. You should also be aware that having relations with an employee may result in legal ramifications for both of you, affecting your employment position and future chances." Chris warned us as we prepared to depart. He gathered the DVD player and photos we had packed. We withdrew, leaving Tom and Brad to enjoy their private conversation. I was ready to ask Chris a question, but he motioned for silence until we got outside. Chris had observed Jennifer lurking around the corner, trying to eavesdrop. The last sound I heard was Tom barking into the intercom. "Bring him here immediately!" I grinned, expecting an intriguing confrontation as Tom soon discovered the DVD I found at home. Once outside, I asked Chris why he thought Brad might use his own recording against Tom. "Divide and conquer," Chris explained. "It's just better if they don't present a cohesive front and instead focus on defending themselves. That way, if Tom makes us a lowball offer, we can pit them against one another. Brad and Tom also have families and established reputations in their communities. They are not interested in shaking things up." As we left the building, I understood it would be remembered as the location where my wife betrayed me, not her distinguished workplace. Chris's words snapped me back to reality. "All right, let us get a beer before our next meeting at the tennis club at 4 p.m. We both need to drink. And I have something I need to talk with you, but I'm not sure how," Chris mentioned. We went across town to the tennis club and stopped at a little pub and restaurant nearby. Chris got 2 drinks and started talking. "David, I anticipate Tom Mitchell will make an offer, most likely for less than $1 million. I'm familiar with his legal team from another case, and they're very skilled. He is also practical. I'll call him tomorrow and tell him that a lowball offer will benefit his business or personal life. He revealed that he will make a proposal of roughly $3 million or advise that we end the negotiations altogether. In addition, I need to know if the offer is rejected. I have your permission to show Jennifer in an unfavorable light. I want to defer my obligation as your lawyer, which is to win. Even if it means disclosing potentially harmful information about Jennifer, your marriage, and your personal life. It may get ugly and extremely public. However, I want to use every legal strategy available to secure our case." He warned that the information that could be revealed could not be to your liking. I had seriously considered it. I believe I have more integrity than they do, and I am willing to proceed if necessary. However, I prefer to examine the financial offer first. I said. Chris agreed and advised, starting by evaluating Tom's offer. He promised me that if Thomas's offer was inadequate, he would handle the paperwork promptly. He also discussed leveraging his newspaper contacts and acquaintances at 3 local news stations, who would be keen to gather film and photographs, even if it meant censoring obscene information. "Chris, you have always been there for me, and I trust your judgment. I simply wish this entire mess had never happened. Being an oblivious husband was preferable to being publicly humiliated by a cheating spouse. Nonetheless, you have my permission to do whatever is required. After all, I did not cause this mess, but I am determined to put an end to it as quickly as possible, I replied, frustration evident in my voice. I understand, David. Not an issue. Now let us talk about the material for our next meeting. Mr. Frank Nash owns the tennis club. He's the individual I mentioned in the video at my office. He's likely to take a hands-off attitude, stating that grown-ups will be adults and that he won't interfere. Even Mike's tennis coach may be dismissed for appearances, only to be rehired later. Mike is extremely popular in the club, particularly among the female members. Remember, David, that while males primarily pay club dues, women are equally important stakeholders. This dynamic will be important in your conversation with Mr. Nash. He briefed me. We arrived just in time, and Mr. Nash and Chris clearly disagreed. Their hostility was obvious from the beginning. Chris said, "Mr. Nash, this is David Lewis." He nodded at me. "His wife is a member of the club. We learned that Mike Johnson, your tennis coach, was having an affair with Mr. Lewis's wife. We want to know what you intend to do about this." Chris ended. He waited for Nash to answer, but I knew he'd dismiss Chris with a few words. "Listen. What two consenting adults do behind closed doors on their own time is none of my business," Frank Nash said. "And if you can keep your wife happy, don't blame me if she wanders. Many unhappy couples visit this tennis club, and some return for the unique treatment my staff delivers." "If you catch my drift," Frank remarked with a cheeky smile. Rage poured through me, but Chris calmly gripped my wrist, telling me to remain calm and follow his lead. "Frank, you are assuming that this occurred without your knowledge or approval. That is quite an assumption," Chris explained, pulling out a DVD player and setting it on Frank's desk. He pressed play, aiming the screen toward Frank. As Frank viewed the tape, the color drained from his cheeks. Before Frank could react, Chris leaped in. "Frank, you and your team intentionally exploited a member named Jennifer Lewis, a married woman whose fees were paid by Mr. Lewis. Mr. Louis is naturally a disgruntled customer. When word of this spreads, every paying husband will wonder if his wife is doing the same while he pays the tab. I will need to subpoena everyone who was in the locker room that day." Chris added with a serious tone, "I doubt the married men will appreciate that. In addition, recording in the locker room violates privacy. Frank, once we're done with you, your club's reputation will be shattered and your finances will collapse. Chris emphasized that we want a big financial settlement and prompt action from you. This could save you a lot of hassle and money." Chris proceeded, as we watched Frank Nash contemplate his alternatives. "Chris, you are not like everyone else, but your rationale is sound. I'll call you tomorrow with an offer. If I comply, all tapes will be returned to me and kept confidential. Mike will be dismissed immediately. Now, if that is all you legal bandits wanted, leave," Frank remarked, disregarding us. Chris smiled, taking the DVD player and turning it off. "Oh, and say hello to Victor Ramirez for me," Chris said to Frank as we exited the room. "Go to hell." Hayes was Frank's only response. Chris laughed his way to the parking lot. "Well, it was quite an adventure. Now we're waiting for offers," Chris told me as we drove to his place for a prepared dinner. By the end of the week, Tom Mitchell had offered roughly $2.7 million. Brad Bennett, who mistakenly handed over all of his tapes to Tom, found himself jobless when Tom fired him, leaving Brad with few options. I went after Brad S.'s two clients who were engaged with my wife. Both were desperate to prevent publicity for their companies and themselves, so they offered me $1 million to be silent. Frank Nash refused to make an offer and suggested we seek legal action instead. So we did. He ended up losing $3 million, and by the time we finished with him, his club had experienced a large exodus of members, forcing him to relinquish ownership. He thought he could walk away unscathed, but the court was unimpressed by the locker room film and the infidelity. I gave Jennifer the house and car she desired without paying any child support. I only saw her twice in court. Both times I called her a strumpet. She cried. I frequently questioned why she sobbed now, but not before wreaking such havoc in my life. Following Chris's counsel, I ended up with more money than I ever dreamed. Even still, the pain stayed and haunted me until now. Lost in thinking. All the difficulties of that terrible year came flooding back. I hadn't realized anyone was talking to me until I jolted out of my daydream and heard the restaurant manager inquire whether everything was fine. Unsure how long I'd been standing there, I shook my head to clear it and returned to the present. Sorry. Just got caught in some old memories. Thanks, I informed the manager, noting his odd expression, similar to how people look at someone who is deep in thought. I went straight to my ex-wife's table. The shock on her face was obvious. When she last saw me, I was overweight, with long hair and a beard. I'm still battling an old knee injury from baseball. That was my excuse. But in truth, I'd settled into a comfortable existence with her. Now with a shorter haircut, a more toned physique from regular workouts, and a healed knee. I looked quite different after the settlements. My outfits were now high-end, and I made an effort to show myself well in public. I chose to initiate the conversation. "You look stunning today, Strumpet. I almost forgot how beautiful you are," I remarked, intending to offend her. "My name is Jennifer. David." "Why aren't you calling me by my name?" she snapped, obviously angry. "I did not give you the nickname Strumpet. You know who did it? I just find it appropriate. I warned you 3 years ago that you'd break my heart," I murmured, studying her face. The man next to her began to rise, preparing to defend her, but she pushed him to remain seated. Tears welled up in her eyes and smeared her makeup. Her boyfriend stepped in. "Go fix your makeup, Jen. I'll handle this jerk." With those words, she stood and locked eyes with me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her response took me by surprise. I doubted she still had feelings for me. Perhaps it was guilt. "I anticipate you to be gone when I return," she murmured tearfully, walking to the restroom. As she dried her eyes, I saw a big engagement band on her finger. "You must be David Lewis, Jennifer's husband," he remarked with a sneer. "Indeed." "And you must be the new man she has been dreaming of," I responded, sensing his hostility. "I'm Jennifer, CFO. I'd encourage you to check your language," he said, evidently attempting to avoid a confrontation. "I only have a few questions before I leave your life forever," I informed him, noting his bewildered expression. "I have been where you are, and I do not want anyone else to go through what I did. I am sure she has portrayed me as a bad husband, violent, negligent, or a womanizer. But I am not here to alter your opinion of myself." First question. Is Jessica still hosting her Avon parties on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Jennifer assists Jessica with her decor sales on Mondays and Wednesdays. Your memory must be fading, he said smugly. All good then. Is she still playing tennis on Saturdays? I asked. Jennifer plays tennis on Sundays. Your recollection appears pretty poor for someone who was married to her for so long, he replied triumphantly. Finally, have you ever searched under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room? I inquired. No. Why should I do that? He responded, evidently bewildered. I asked 3 questions about why we are no longer together. I still have the remaining divorce paperwork, emails from Jessica and the other women, and hours of videotapes. I've had these with me for 3 years. I thought you should have them, I continued, taking out a tattered piece of paper from my wallet. Another woman wrote to Jessica, asking how to get rid of me before I discovered her infidelity. After reading that letter, I realized I didn't know Jennifer. But everything revolves around you, I said, passing him the paper. I was well familiar with Jennifer's routines. She consistently stuck to the same routine, which drove me nuts at times. I suspected that even with a new boyfriend, she'd continue her old behaviors. He paused, but curiosity got the best of him. He reached over to open the mail. I've carried it for 3 years, revisiting it on occasion and working to improve myself so that no woman would ever write such things about me again. That letter was the most impactful piece of evidence for me. That's why I kept it with me. He read the letter slowly before setting it down. Quickly. He grabbed a pen, composed a note, and quickly exited the restaurant without looking back or saying, "Thank you." His face remained expressionless. I bent over to see what he'd written. "I will be returning soon. Please wait here. I need to look under the bottom drawer of the living room dresser. Adam." I had the impression he'd seen the truth, even if he didn't like it. The letter appeared to be the tipping point, and he needed to verify it personally. "I'm leaving a note on Jennifer's table." I left the restaurant. There was no way I could stay there tonight. In the foyer, I called my client, who agreed to reschedule our meeting because they were running late anyway. Before departing, I looked back at the table. Jennifer returned to hunt for Adam. Sitting down, she saw her old letter and Adam's note. Her cheeks became pale as she read them. When I last saw my ex-wife, she was sobbing so hard that the entire restaurant stared. I felt a touch of sympathy but was primarily unconcerned. That was my last encounter with her. I still wonder if Adam discovered anything under the dresser drawer. Jennifer's tears suggested that he may have. Here's the next story. Phyllis and I, Travis McKinney. In terms of likes and dislikes, they could be described as any other couple. Her hobbies and objectives are very different from mine. While I golf and write short stories, she makes crafts and is vying for the at-large position on the local council. Unlike elections for state and national governments, which have budgets, vying for a municipal seat is primarily funded by friends, relatives, and some unsavory persons looking for an advantage. She is rather youthful in comparison to the old fogies who are currently accepting bribes. As with every marriage, we don't always agree and have various preferences, dislikes, and pet peeves. As an example, when I was 11 years old and playing Little League Baseball, I was bitten by a stray dog. Even today, when I hear a dog snarl, the hair on my neck rises. So I don't like dogs, although Phyllis does. Spiders and snakes do not bother me, but wasps do. Phyllis, on the other hand, despises spiders, snakes, and anything else that crawls across the floor. Want to hear someone act as if the world is ending? Listen to Phyllis. If a mouse or cockroach comes across her path, I am expected to accomplish something. What remains unclear. Simply get rid of it. And no teasing about it. We both enjoy cats but don't own one. Our travel plans for work make it difficult to care for and feed them. Perhaps our work-related travel will become less frequent in the future. Who knows, maybe we'll have a family in the future. But not until the election is over for sure. I work in accounting, forensics, or financial investigations. My files contain information on some of life's cruelest criminals. They steal from people who cannot afford to be cheated. Phyllis performs public relations for County General Hospital. She has become the face of their community engagement initiative. Because we are not bound down. We've been known to travel to warm destinations with beaches. We tend to stay at all-inclusive resorts with an open bar. They make that portion of it work by providing subpar service. If you appear to be tipping the scales in your favor, prepare to have your order slowly walked back to you. Nonetheless, I've gotten plastered more often than not. Phyllis is adamant about this. She can't have a nice time since I'm so drunk. Whatever. I'm there to escape the pressures of my job, after all. To celebrate Phyllis's birthday, we had a nice supper at an elegant restaurant. We skipped the after-dinner sweets and wine to get home and have some adult fun. I sense that our week-long break from intimacy may be coming to an end. Phyllis complimented me. I'm delighted to see you're ready to climb back into the saddle. I suggested that Phyllis take one of her ecstasy tablets to improve tonight's activities. Phyllis regularly buys ecstasy for herself and blue pills for me when she visits Mexico. Both greatly enhanced our satisfaction, as we had not had intimacy since returning home from our trip last weekend. Phyllis had a glint in her eye and smiled broadly. I walked Phyllis down the hall to our bedroom. Rose petals were sprinkled on the bed, along with a feather to tickle her. She is really ticklish, and has used our safe word to get me to stop using the feather. She appears to take joy in being rendered helpless. That is likely to change tonight. Phyllis examined the bedroom. Oh, goody. I think I'm going to have a treat tonight. Well, it's your birthday, so I thought I'd do it well. Do what you need to do in the restroom and take your pill. I will be right back. She literally skipped into the restroom, full with enthusiasm. I went to the garage to grab my bag of goodies. Phyllis waited for me on the bed, wearing nothing but a smile. Flip over, was said quietly. Be calm, my heart. Something unusual tonight. She giggled as she rolled over onto her stomach. I used the first soft, lined restraint to gently bind her hands to the side bedpost. I usually connect them to the center of the headboard, but tonight was different. Her arms and legs would be completely stretched. Yes, I read something intriguing. Let us see what you think. After securing her wrists, I moved on to her ankles, fastening one and quickly latching the other. She teased, saying she was trying something new tonight. I have a few surprises for you. What's the safe word? Just in case I'm not fond of this small attempt, our safe phrases were always playful. Kitten or rainbow? Something fun. But as I grabbed for the gag and placed it over her head, she squirmed. Travis, what are you doing? I leaned in with my voice. Steady. You are safe. Tonight's word. His overnight sensation. Her body tightened immediately, and her eyes widened. No. Let's take a look back at last weekend. Phyllis and I had scheduled a 4-day, 3-night trip to Aruba. We arrived mid-afternoon on Thursday, and I drank far too much, passing out soon after supper. The next day, I was out cold even before dinner. I felt like awful on Saturday morning. No more drinking for me. I also told Phyllis that. I was in the doghouse. Apparently, my drinking was destroying her vacation. To say Phyllis was outraged would be an understatement. Instead of waiting for me, she took her tote bag and went down to the beach without saying goodbye. I didn't have to do anything to get ready. So a minute later, I was out the door. The elevators are inefficient, and I caught a glimpse of Phyllis in the overcrowded elevator as the doors closed. What I saw was the guy she'd been flirting with the first night. Give her a kiss on the cheek and offer her the envelope, rather than waiting for the next elevator. I downed the flights of steps to the main level. Phyllis walked carefully toward the beach exit, reading a note as she left the building. She crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash can. As I approached the garbage bin, I conducted some dumpster diving. It would transform my life. The note stated, Phyllis, you have been an absolute overnight sensation these last 2 nights. The affection was overwhelming, and giving you so much excitement made me feel like a king. Too bad he won't be drinking today. Alternatively, we may have spiked his drink again. I'll have to wait till I see you in Sacramento before we meet again. Vince and the jerk even provided his phone number. Well, Vince, friend, I'll do everything it takes to provide you with an unforgettable experience, one you won't forget. With my head, stomach, and heart racing, I sat on one of the benches and fumed. That deceptive woman. I went to the front desk once my wrath had subsided to the point of being less than a raging crazy. Following a huge financial outlay, the assistant manager reviewed the security footage and showed me exactly what Phyllis had been up to the previous 2 nights. He told me that if I went to the police, they would not investigate. Nothing negative ever happens at their resort. The first night began with Phyllis and me sitting around a large table with around 10 others. I was downing the beers and paying too much attention to one of the solo women. Phyllis was upset and began paying attention to the man by her side. Vince, I believe I was inebriated when he muttered something into her ear. She took my drink and gave it to him. A minute later, Phyllis was pressing me to drink more. 15 minutes later, Phyllis and Vince assisted me into our room. Vince left 6 hours later, in the early morning hours of day 2. We were in our beach chairs when Phyllis left to get refills. She hooked up with Vince after we had our beers. A minute later, Phyllis and Vince assisted me into our room. Vince, his companion, left approximately 8 hours later. The remainder of our vacation was fraught with contention. I wanted to kill her, but that was not going to happen. I needed to make a plan before I did anything. Sitting around airports waiting for our return flights gave me plenty of opportunity to think of an acceptable vengeance. When anything came to mind, I smirked deviously. Return to the present night. Now, I don't mind an ex-wife having a lover, but she wasn't my ex-wife yet. If you're going to mess around, have the decency to divorce first. After tonight, I believe she'll file for divorce. Just a guess. Phyllis's words became incomprehensible once the ball gag was in place. Lots of tears and incoherent sounds. I reached into my bag of goods and brought out the Uranus silicone-based back lubrication. This stuff is meant to be good. Okay, guys, it's time for something different. After shoving a few pillows under Phyllis to raise her back, fear set in. Phyllis was attempting to break free as I pushed the lubrication beyond her rosebud. Her writhing about made it a little more interesting. Phyllis turned her head, but her troubled expression and tears didn't move me. It's time to carry out my plan. Well, Phyllis, you appear to be enjoying this, but I have an even greater surprise for you on your birthday. I reached into my shopping bag and pulled out a covered mason jar containing several cicadas and as many silverfish bugs, making a great show about it. I showed the jar to Phyllis. I continued as the bugs moved randomly. Since your spirit is jammed up your back, I've enlisted these little fellows to clean it up. Phyllis was gurgling and squirming around, testing the strength of her bindings. It might possibly have sounded like overnight. My nonsense. The 101 lesson continued. Something you should know about these pests, Phyllis. When they find a warm, dark location, they burrow into your skin and begin laying eggs. There are only approximately 10 eggs laid each day, but they hatch swiftly. Of course, I will put approximately a dozen bugs up your back, so do the math. That's a bunch of babies every day till you can dump them out. You'll feel them move nearly immediately. Even doctors struggle to find the eggs. Absolute loid of fear has set in. I removed one of the dark pillowcases from a pillow and draped it over Phyllis's head. She is having difficulty seeing now. Returning to my bag of goods, I replaced the bug jar with a mason jar containing my little torture liquid. Phyllis could hear the jar being opened, mostly because I did it near her ear. Oh, these folks are creepy, pretending to be working on the bugs. The bugs were still safely inside their container. Instead, I dipped the rear beads into a jar of liquid gel lube gel mixed with prank itching powder. The itching powder bottle includes a vague warning about avoiding contact with almost every part of your body. I do not have the time or inclination to read it. Wait. Let us sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Cheating wife. Happy birthday to you. This is your first present. As I inserted the beads into Phyllis's back, I was filled with delight because she was jerking around like a bucking bronco with every fake bug I'd given you or yuck. One time, I was simply cruel. Oops. One is attempting to escape. Back in, buddy. Plunge after plunge of the beads while I pretended to put a dozen bugs into each one. I had another dosage of irritating powder-laced gel. After I finished, I took out another mason jar from my backpack. This one was vacant. All done. As I took the pillow cover off Phyllis's head and exposed the empty mason jar, she was doing her hardest to break away, if this wasn't bad enough. I took the feather and ran it up and down her feet and underarms for several minutes. I should film this. Phyllis was doing an excellent job of pressing her back together. With a little feather motion on her rosebud, I believe I pushed her over the top. I've never seen such a hateful, tear-stained expression in my life. Oh well, you never know how your spouse will react when they discover you've been cheating. I'm going to go get some beer. I announced that I would be back in a bit. In fact, I grabbed a beer before taking the jar of bugs outside and releasing them back into the wild. I'd gotten some of the itching power on my hand, and I have to admit, that stuff works. Even after a thorough scrub, I was still scratching my hand. Hand lotion seems to assist, if only slightly. After about 30 minutes, I figured Phyllis was going to go nuts. The next step in my plan was sure to leave me battered and bruised. What the hell? I used the feather again. I am protecting myself. I carefully untie the restraining bands from Phyllis's ankles and kneel on her right hand. I released the strap, but not her hand. I reached over and released her left hand before leaping from the bed. Phyllis ripped a gag off as her other hand began prodding at her back. "You are an utter jerk. I promise I'll make you pay for this," she shouted and swung the ball gag at me for almost a minute. I allowed her to bite, kick, scrape, and flail on me. I deflected her attempts to hurt my balls. Her itching back needs some care, so she halted to scratch it with both hands, trying to remove imagined bugs out of her back. I bear hugged her and began walking towards the front door. She kicked my shins and gouged me with her nails. I could have easily hurt her by throwing her down hard on the cement, but I wanted it to appear as if I was the innocent victim. So I shoved her away and jumped back inside the home. Locking the door left Phyllis outside with the moths and insects, naked as the day she was born. I might mention that they were ranting and yelling rather loudly. Everything was captured on my phone, including her death threats. It's time to call for help. 911. What is your emergency? My wife took some kind of drug and is now threatening to murder me. I'm bleeding a little, but I managed to shove her out of the house. She's going on and on about bugs, infants, and how I'm accountable. Please dispatch paramedics because she has fully lost it. After I confirmed my address, I was informed that officers and paramedics were on their way. Looking out the window, I noticed Phyllis scooting across the grass. Much as a dog does when its buttocks ache, she was still yelling profanities and stating unequivocally that I was going to die. She was now scratching both her arms and legs. A few of our neighbors were enjoying the spectacle. The red and blue lights bounced off the houses in the area, attracting the deaf residents. Everyone had a good look at Phyllis in her full magnificence. When she refused to stay still as commanded by the authorities, they tasered her. They slap the cuffs on once the subject is immobile. Of course, this kept Phyllis from scratching her itch. The paramedics were instructed not to sedate her since they did not know what type of hallucinogen Phyllis had ingested. She was strapped to a gurney with her wrists and feet shackled. Phyllis was telling them everything about her ordeal. My spouse tied me up and shoved bugs up my back. They're making babies. They are slithering around. I can sense them. Get them out. I am going to kill him. The responders simply rolled their eyes because they had presumably encountered worse nutcases. Phyllis and the paramedics left for County General Hospital to deliver my statement. The cops took photos of my injuries. I told them about a night of activity and how Phyllis had used ecstasy to boost her excitement. Then she started talking wild and became violent. She told them she bought the tablets in Mexico. Hook, line, sinker. They left me to deal with my own injuries. They claimed they were obligated to arrest her for domestic violence. Withdrawing my consent makes no difference. Woo! An extra benefit. In addition, she was facing charges of resisting arrest, possession of a controlled narcotic, and smuggling it into the county. The last two are felonies. I had no idea she had been breaching the law for several years by wearing considerably more bandages than were required. I drove to County General to play the inquiring and supportive husband. My hands itched as I emptied the goodie bag of mason jars, beads, and itching powder into the trash can by the hospital door. Emergency rooms, being what they are, do not go out of their way to treat drug overdoses. Nutcase. She was way down the triage hierarchy. They'd extracted blood in an attempt to identify the medicines involved. She was still restrained. Whatever they put in the IV had calmed her down. That is, until she saw me. Yeah. When they rolled her out, she felt even more relaxed. I was told that they would perform a CT scan to definitively show that she was not infested with bugs. I expressed worry. It was probably around midnight when the attending physician gave me an update. Mr. McKinney, from what we can tell, your wife used ecstasy. We've never seen a reaction like this before, especially because the enema produced no foreign items. We performed a CT scan, which revealed nothing surprising in her colon or rectum. She scratched herself quite seriously back there. Every time we release a hand, she soon starts scratching herself again, so we keep her tied, even after showing her the results. She is convinced that she can still feel bugs crawling and having kids. We will keep her overnight for observation. She's now sedated, and maybe, as the euphoria wears off, she'll return to normal. Does she still threaten to kill me? As you can think, that upsets me quite a bit, I asked. Yes. We made notes on her charts. As I have stated, we have never witnessed a reaction to ecstasy like this. I apologize. I shrugged my shoulders, returned to her chamber, and kissed her sleeping forehead. Everything for show. Normally, municipal council candidates do not receive much news coverage, but they were drawn to this ongoing circus. Someone must have called the anonymous tip line before heading to the hospital. A city council candidate has been accused with domestic abuse and resisting arrest. A possible illegal drug overdose is implicated. Held overnight for psychiatric evaluation using evidence from paramedics, the hospital, and my video. Obtaining a restraining order was an easy task, keeping Phyllis 500 feet away from me. I decided not to file for divorce until I saw how things turned out. The wild bet is that she will initiate the process. The following morning, Phyllis and his parents paid her a visit, but the shouting, raving, and death threats continued. I informed them about the restraining order and her arrest. They understood and stated that she was still tied to her bed. Normally, overdose victims are freed the following day. Phyllis Wilde's story about bugs and infants, as well as her continual desire to scratch her itch, kept her for 2 more nights. I guess it took that long for the irritating concoction to be pooped. Phyllis stood before a judge. Bail was made high due to drug smuggling allegations, but her parents bailed her out. To no one's surprise, I was served with divorce papers the next day. Of course, the reporters had nothing better to do, so they pressed me for a statement. Naturally, I wore much too many bandages. Mr. Travis, could you tell us about the events that led to your wife's arrest? Well, Phyllis appreciates some playful constraint. Following an intimate moment, I began tormenting her with a feather. She suddenly lost control. When I liberated her, she lashed out, biting and striking me. I even requested the authorities not to file charges for domestic violence. However, that choice appears to have been made without my input. No additional comments. There's too much information. You have to enjoy stories with filthy laundry. Phyllis showed up with the sheriff to collect some of her stuff. My attorney only allowed her to take her apparel because everything else was subject to an asset distribution agreement after the divorce. I could sense that Phyllis intended to say and do things to me. Bad things happen. However, with the sheriff watching her every step, all she could do was give me a really wicked look. I feigned to itch my buttocks, and she nearly passed out. Phyllis lost the election. The press relentlessly pursued her regarding her love life and mental collapse. I imagine she's got the sharks circling again. Her private life became a major topic, and she received unwanted attention. As a result, she was allocated a desk job at the hospital. While they couldn't simply fire her, they didn't want her to be the institution's public face. With the possibility that Phyllis might provide me with an unforgettable experience, I accepted a job overseas as soon as I could find one. There's no reason to tempt the revenge gods. It also kept me from asking when a man called Vince from Sacramento had his bank and investment accounts drained of more than $250,000, according to the tale. Thank you for the phone number, Vince. Those con artists are willing to work freelance. I sent him a greeting card, a steep price to pay for an overnight sensation in Aruba. Following a psychiatric examination, Phyllis was found fit to stand trial. She pleaded no contest to the domestic violence accusation. They dismissed the resisting arrest charge. She had plea bargained down the drug smuggling charges, but she was now a convicted criminal. Not realizing you are breaking the law must have played a role in that deal. 60 days behind jail and extensive community service. Phyllis just wanted to know one thing at our Zoom mandatory divorce last meeting. Someday you will have to tell me how you did it. Really? You're not even sorry for destroying our marriage. I am pleased to be rid of you, I asked. You are a shame. Tell me about the bugs, she responded. There were no insects. All I did was tickle you. You'll have to explain why you did it. Instead of breaking your marital vows, obtain a divorce. There were bugs. Just tell me, please, she pleaded. And that is how our marriage ended. I am not planning on returning to the United States. If you had seen the sight in Phyllis's eyes, you would have entirely agreed with me. I think she has a bug up her back. I'm back on the dating scene, but I'm not looking for anything serious. Commitment appeared to have issues that needed to be sorted out. All right, I will stop with the bug references. When Phyllis's back itches, I wonder if she thinks the kids are hatching. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.